I think one of the biggest issues confronting the city has to do with equity, right? Making sure there's affordable housing as well as access to public facilities like public spaces. There's all of a sudden this problem of a big spread between wealthy and less wealthy, right? And so I think the lowline plays an important role in that. And it's something that, the city is working very hard, I think, to address right now. Around the world, our cities are just growing at a phenomenal rate, and as they grow, we have to make sure that people have enough power, transportation, housing, water. But I think it's important that we provide public space, basic facet of livability. And so by being able to activate space that was previously unused, I think that we have a solution that allows us to create more livable cities in places where there's a lot of people, which is increasingly the trend around the world. And so when we found this space underground, all of a sudden we have this opportunity to create a new public space where there is no more space left to create anything. So, it presents a pretty unique opportunity for that neighborhood. So the space that we selected for the lowline is special in several ways. On the one hand, it's enormous. It's a very large space for abandoned spaces in New York. Number two, it doesn't have a proposed future use. And then number three, it's actually in a very important neighborhood in New York where it's in the sort of the middle of a historic neighborhood that doesn't really have very much public space. So by creating an underground public space where there is no public space, we're able to create a park in an area that really has no open areas anymore. How do we actually make it a usable space? Above ground, we're capturing sunlight with these sort of parabolic collectors, right? And we're concentrating the light down to a very focused beam of sunlight, and we're sending it down through the earth. And then once it gets underground, we're just re-spreading that light back out. But along the way, we're keeping some light and we're throwing some light away, right? So it doesn't get too hot. We're keeping the light that's important for plants to grow, and we're using that to sort of spread out and create this space. And then down in the space, we've got this kind of ceiling that's like an undulating wave of metal, really, or mirror, right? Where there are parts that are highly reflective, where you can kind of see a reflection. There's areas that are a little bit more sort of diffuse, where it's just sort of glowing a little bit like the sky. And so we have this sort of tension between the future and the old. When we bring in that light, we're bringing in just pure light that plants can use, etc. And we're taking out a lot of the infrared, so it doesn't make it hotter. We can create a space that not only is eco-friendly, it uses almost zero energy, but it's a space that you can use year-round because it never gets too cold or too hot in there. I think in the case of Hudson Yards, they had an opportunity to really do something different and creative with urban design, but they didn't really do that. They just kind of built like an island and dropped it onto New York. It's maybe not a great example of sort of urban regeneration. I think that there's other ways that you can create new growth and integrate it more deeply into the fabric of the city and make it something for the people that are actually living here. So, look, the low line is an example of something that specifically we're trying to build to address the neighborhood that already exists in this location and, create something lovely for the city to enjoy. We've been approached by cities around the world to sort of rethink some of their unused spaces, from London to Paris to Seoul, actually. And I think the low line is something that's a solution for almost any city that is very densely built. So because it creates space and makes it usable out of something that usually would just be thrown away. Let's say in 10 years, it's my hope that we create this next generation space in New York that's completely unlike anything else in the world, where we have this union, this fusion of future and past that's creating something no one's ever seen before. And I hope that it inspires people in other cities around the world to do something similar, but to create these spaces where we're sort of pushing the limits of our imagination on what we can do. The low line is a solution to a problem. It's how do you create space when there is no space, right? And so we got very creative. And so I think, it's not just the low line and its technology. I think in general, it's like, how can we think more creatively about how we make our cities better?